Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the SoCal Sports Dudes podcast. Jason Wayne here. Today, I wanted to talk about NFL offseason moves. As we know, the Super Bowl wrapped up a little while back now. It's already in April. Sorry, I've been busy. I'm also a real estate agent, so there was some activity there on my behalf that I had to kind of see to. So I haven't been able to come out with a podcast right away. But anyway, figured now there's a few moves, and some of the players have kind of settled in with new teams. There's been a few trades and free agent signings. Of course, the draft is just around the corner, so we're going to keep an eye on that. But kind of exciting to see where these players go and who ends up where and what teams look like they did a good job there in the offseason to strengthen their case and make a run toward next year's playoff and obviously chase for the Super Bowl title. But also some of these other teams, how did they fill voids? What are they doing, to kind of fill out their roster? So let's run through it. I'm going to go division by division. First, we'll start with the AFC East. The Buffalo Bills made a few big moves there. They got Von Miller from the Rams. Gave him a pretty big deal, but give him that pass rushing edge to really solidify that defense. They did plug some holes on offense. I think they did a pretty solid job of spreading it out. They got Case Keenum, of course, back at quarterback. They lose Trubisky, but Case Keenum, that's a solid backup quarterback there. Running back Duke Johnson, not a bad third down back type to maybe split the carries and maybe share a little bit of the workload with Singletary. I don't know, Zach Moss, is he going to be back? I don't know. So they got offensive lineman Roger Saffold. Looks like a good pickup there. And tight end O.J. Howard, among others. So Buffalo Bills look like they did a pretty good job there this offseason. The Miami Dolphins, the other team there in their division, they look like they made quite some impressive moves. They traded for Tyreek Hill. So, the new head coach there, Mike McDaniel, will have a new weapon in Tyreek Hill, who obviously, fastest guy in the league probably. But a little surprised maybe KC moved on from him, but I guess they felt the price was right and, the money that it was going to command, they have to pay a number of guys there. So they move on from Tyreek Hill. But aside from that, the Dolphins, aside from acquiring Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins are pretty busy. They signed Teddy Bridgewater to come in, back up to they get running back Chase Edmonds from Arizona. Also, Raheem Mostert from the Niners. That could be potentially he was injured at the end of the year, but if he can come back healthy, could be a good get. Wide receiver Cedric Wilson from the Cowboys. Looks like a good target there. So you strengthen the wide receiver position. They did move on, traded Devontae Parker to the Patriots, but you get Wilson and Tyreek Hill there. O-line, they got Terran Armstead from the Saints and Connor Williams from the Cowboys. So looks like a good offseason there for the Dolphins. But aside from just spending the money, you want to see if they are able to mesh that into to the results on the field that I'm sure they're looking for. New England, not too many big moves, but they did re-sign Trent Brown, good pickup there, or a good guy to keep. James White, they picked up Ty Montgomery to also add to that mix of running back rotation they got there. And they bring back Malcolm Butler, cornerback, Super Bowl hero there, so he is back with New England. The Jets re-sign both Joe Flacco and Mike White, quarterbacks, so run that back there with the trio of Wilson, Flacco, and Mike White. They re-sign Berrios, the receiver, add a couple tight ends, getting Uzoma and Tyler Conklin from the Vikings. So that's not a bad pickup there. Give a little check down and safety net for Zach Wilson there. We'll see if they add another weapon or two with in the draft, or are they in on this DK Metcalf trade rumor stuff? We'll have to see there, because you think with Corey Davis and now Berrios, but you figure they could probably use another home run threat type there. They signed O-lineman Laken Tomlinson, so kind of solidify themselves up front a little bit, and add safety DJ Reed. So Jets were busy this offseason. So a lot of those AFC East teams, man, they were pretty busy there. They look like a lot of them improved their teams there. Moving to the AFC South, the Houston Texans, of course, traded Deshaun Watson. Wasn't sure if that was ever going to happen, but they finally went ahead and made the move there. Looks like they're going to roll with Davis Mills as their quarterback. They did sign Kyle Allen, most likely for kind of a backup type position there. Defensive tackle Meliot Collins. So, yeah, we'll see what Houston does there. They did get some draft capital, of course, in the Watson trade. So we'll see what they turn that into. Indy made a move getting Matt Ryan. So they, I kind of thought they'd be going after Trubisky. Once they moved on from Wentz, like, okay, what are you guys doing with this? But Trubisky ends up going to, of course, to Pittsburgh. But Matt Ryan, I mean, that's not a bad pickup there. I think Matt Ryan probably wanted out of Atlanta once he saw, hey, you guys are sitting there talking about trading for Deshaun Watson, as we know the Falcons were mentioned as a possible landing spot there for him. But Ryan's like, hey, you're gonna, try and flirt with getting Deshaun Watson. You can get me out of here. So on he goes to Indy. Looks like a good situation from him to go to Atlanta, who I don't know if they're going to be sniffing the playoffs or not, to Indy, who looks pretty well constructed, a team that looks maybe built to maybe ascend to the top of the AFC there. They are in a division that can be, seen as up for the taking there. So good move there, it looks like, by Indy. And they didn't give up a ton for him. Ryan is getting up there a little bit, but we'll see. Obviously, I think that's a good move for them, getting a quarterback of his caliber. They re-signed their tight end, Ali Cox, and they pick up Ngakoue from the Raiders. So pass rusher there. Just a few of the moves of note there. I'm not going to cover every move that every team did, but just some of the main ones I think that really stood out in the list of transactions there. Jacksonville was busy too. They had a lot of cap space. They get wide receiver Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, who's with the Raiders. They signed O-lineman Brandon Scherf from the Washington Commanders, the new name. They tagged Cam Robinson, their O-lineman. So looks like with Scherf there, Cam Robinson, O-line's going to be looking pretty good. You upgraded also at D-tackle, linebacker, and corner. So Doug Peterson comes in. They had cap room. They got the new quarterback. A lot of weapons and a lot of free agent money to spend there. Now they have the draft coming up with a number of top draft picks that we'll see what they turn that into. If they trade and pick up more, I don't know. But Jacksonville looks like they were busy and seemed to do a pretty good job overall. I mean, it did seem like maybe a little much for both Kirk and Zay Jones, but hey, let's see what happens there with the new regime there running things. Tennessee made a trade to get Robert Woods. That was one. I'm a Ram fan, of course, Ram and Raider guy. But Robert Woods was like, man, this guy's great. And the Tennessee just gets him for like a 6th-round pick. I think the Rams needed to move on from him maybe after they made the signing for Allen Robinson. But it's like, really? Like, Robert Woods was such a great player for them in the last few years. So good pickup for Tennessee. They get rid of Julio Jones or move on from Julio Jones and bring Robert Woods in. Of course, he did have a knee injury last year, so we'll have to see him recover from that first. They picked up Seattle O-lineman Jamarco Jones, so offensive lineman there to add to fill in that spot there. Austin Hooper, the tight end, was also added. So Tennessee looks like they didn't spend big, but they made some seems like sensible moves there to help out that roster. Baltimore signed Marcus Williams, safety from New Orleans, and Michael Pierce, D tackle there. So a couple of additions on defense. They were set to add Zadarius Smith there, but he backed out of the deal. So they pivoted, and we'll see if they use that money elsewhere or if they're going to make a trade, maybe build through the draft. They did re-sign Calais Campbell, so Baltimore, more. I'm sure they know how to move on, like keep the roster zipping right along, even after they lose a guy or two. So Cincinnati looked like they had a good offseason. They signed wide receiver Michael Thomas from the Saints. Hayden Hurst, I mean, that's a pretty solid move right there. O-lineman, that's their Achilles heel last year was their O-line. So they loaded up there Leo Collins from the Cowboys. They got Alex Kappa from Tampa Bay and center Ted Karras, who I believe is New England, but that's a solid trio there to add to that offensive line. It's almost going to be like a whole rebuilt O-line there. So good for them. And poor Joe Burrow was under assault all last year, especially in the playoffs. It's like, man, this poor guy needs some protection, and he's going to get killed out there. But nice moves. Look like Cincinnati really was smart about how they approached free agency and not didn't turn a blind eye to fixing that O line and the protection that's needed there. So they did some good things last year with a less than stellar offensive line. So it looked like they definitely strengthened that those positions there in front of them. Also got B.J. Hill, so brought him back. He was a key player along that defensive line. Cleveland, of course, Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's a big get there. I don't know when he's going to be able to play, but they got him. I mean, Houston finally pulled the trigger and moved on from him. So you get one of the elite quarterbacks in the league. Of course, when he's able to play, I don't know this whole court case thing, when it's going to finish up, and if when Watson's going to be allowed to resume football activities and get in there and play again. They did sign Jacoby Brissett, just I think as maybe a stopgap or a guy a bridge quarterback that can get him from starting the season until they know more about Watson's status there. Mark Cooper, wide receiver, was added from the Cowboys, so got a weapon there. I don't know what's going on with the Jarvis Landry thing, though. It looked like they moved on from him, but now they're trying to get him back. Maybe Landry wants to go back now because of Deshaun Watson. I even heard OBJ might be interested in going back to Cleveland. It would be cool if they could fit him in, with the Rams and have that extra receiver. But, the Allen Robinson signing, I don't know if that's going to impact that. But Cleveland, we'll also see what Cleveland does with Baker Mayfield, because they're getting Deshaun. Obviously, they're not going to be keeping Mayfield around. I don't know if they're going to be able to trade and get anything for him, or if they're just going to have to cut him and move on from him. I mean, I seriously doubt they're going to bring him back and let him start the season there. But, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, it depends, I guess, on what Watson's situation is. Pittsburgh, pretty busy here. They got Mitchell Trubisky, of course, the new will be their new quarterback. And you know what? Real quick bummer, man, about Dwayne Haskins. It's like all of a sudden you hear he got hit by a car. I'm like, what happened? And then you hear about it. You're going, what happened here? I don't know. He's out there working out and he's suddenly dies from getting hit by a car. I was just shocked at that. But I thought he was going to get in there and compete with Trubisky, and I don't think Mason Rudolph really had is in the position maybe to be the guy of the future. But Trubisky, maybe, he was with a less than stellar game plan there in Chicago. He did have some pretty decent results. Maybe he learned a few things backing up Josh Allen last year in Buffalo. So, hey, Pittsburgh, it could be worse. If I'm a Pittsburgh fan or if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm happy they got Trubisky in there instead of just trying to insist that Mason Rudolph's the starter. So we'll see. I mean, do they have something else up their sleeve in the draft? Or, you got the local guy, Kenny Pickett there, who went to Pitt. Is he slipped in the draft enough to where when the Steelers are picking, they can say, hey, let's grab Pickett and let's let him sit on the bench for a year or two behind Trubisky and see where it goes. But aside from that, though, they got a couple O linemen here. James Daniels from Chicago, Mason Cole, the center from Minnesota. They picked up linebacker Miles Jack from Jacksonville, and Buffalo cornerback Levi Wallace. So another O lineman. Sorry if I mispronounced his name, Okorafor. So Steelers, that was one position. A weakness last year for them was their offensive line. So they, kind of like Cincinnati added some pieces there to really strengthen that unit. Moving on to the AFC West, the big one, of course, Denver trading for Russell Wilson. Wow, I thought last time I did a podcast, I thought maybe Aaron Rodgers was going there with that whole head coaching move of them hiring the Green Bay assistant, but. Yeah, Russell Wilson, man, that's Seattle decided to move on from him, and Denver moved in for the kill there on that one, trading Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and picks. But we'll see. Denver's obviously that propels them. That's going to be a heck of a division, especially with 4 great quarterbacks in there. It's going to be interesting to see how who rises to the top on that. They also got D lineman DJ Jones from the 49ers. And outside linebacker Randy Gregory from the Cowboys. So pretty good move there by Denver. Kansas City, they of course traded Tyreek Hill, so that's going to be interesting to see gonna be weird to see Kansas City's offense without Tyreek running around, Mahomes throwing the ball to him, and that Hill and Kelsey and Mahomes trio was just a killer for them the last 3 years. So going to be interesting to see how do they fill that spot, or how does that change their game plan. We'll see. They did pick up Juju Smith-Schuster, solid receiver who's with the Steelers. They franchise tag Orlando Brown, their offensive tackle, and they signed Justin Reed, who's a safety, to a pretty good deal there. So KC was busy. They got obviously more competition now in that AFC West, but they are still going to be right there in the thick of it for that in that division. The Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, they get Chandler Jones from the Arizona Cardinals. So trading Ngakoue to Indy, but they signed Chandler Jones. So they did a lot of moves, smaller type deals, but with the new regime there in place, maybe they figured, okay, let's take this a different approach as opposed to signing a bunch of high price free agents. They got two of them, but they also got a number of other guys that really, I think, fill in roster spots and strengthen the whole squad there. The other big move, of course, they got Devontae Adams from the Green Bay Packers. A little bit of a surprise there that the Packers traded him away, but I guess they were kind of franchise tagging him. He wasn't going to sign anything long term. So Aaron Rodgers' favorite target comes to the Raiders. So that's going to be fun, man, to see. They haven't really had a good number one receiver really since Amari Cooper was traded away, and they had nothing. Kind of other guys, just plug and chug types. And you had the Henry Ruggs thing where he goes, unfortunately, he gets in that car accident, and now he's off the team and in jail, and kind of a mess there. But they, maybe that the Devontae Adams thing could be the move that is what Derek Carr's looked for. Plus, it was his former college teammate there at Fresno State. So big move there. They get Demarcus Robinson also from Kansas City. So that was another, he was like Mahomes' fourth receiver or so there. But guy who has some skills, some good size and stuff. So maybe he can be an improvement over the current batch that they have here. They did lose Zay Jones to Jacksonville, but I didn't see a whole lot out of him until kind of toward the end of the year. He kind of bursted out and had a couple of good years. So you got a couple other guys there with like Edwards in place, and now you have Adams, Robinson. So they signed Brandon Bolden, running back from the Patriots, and Amir Abdullah. So maybe a couple of complementary pieces there to go with Josh Jacobs. And McDaniels, of course, loves having multiple running backs he can use. At least in New England he did. So we'd like to think that with the Raiders he'll spread it out a little bit. The Chargers had a big offseason. They re-signed Mike Williams, wide receiver. They traded for Khalil Mack. They signed defensive cornerback J.C. Jackson. So some big names there. Sebastian Joseph Day from the Rams, D lineman there. And Austin Johnson. So, I mean, what they really loaded up, man. They look like, I think this is going to be kind of the last year for them under the Herbert rookie deal. So, made a splash in free agency, made a trade to get a couple players. I mean, they really look like they're, really going to try and make a run at this thing and compete in that division. Because, like we talked about, Denver, KC, Raiders, Chargers. That's solid. All four good squads, all capable of making the playoffs, all have really good quarterbacks, good coaching. So good division right there. It's going to be fun to see who comes out on top on that one. Real quick before I move on to the NFC, I forgot Tennessee re-signed Harold Landry. That's a big move. They get their main pass rusher who had a big year for them last year, and then they re-signed their center Ben Jones. So Tennessee, those were two I kind of had on small notes here. But anyway, good move by them on top of the Robert Woods and Jamarco Jones, Austin Hooper moves there. So, okay, NFC East. Let's move on here. Dallas Cowboys, they lost Gregory, of course, to the Broncos, but they signed Dante Fowler to be kind of the edge rusher type. So guy there who may be in the right system with Dan Quinn there. Maybe they can utilize his talents the most. They re-signed both Vander Esch and wide receiver Michael Gallup. So couple of key players there that they didn't let get away. And they brought in James Washington, who's a pretty good receiver at with the Steelers, had his moments. Was a big play receiver in college at Oklahoma State, so maybe he's from that part of the country. And you lose Cedric Wilson, but you bring in James Washington, so might be a guy that Prescott's going to like throwing to. And it looks like Gallup got hurt there, so yeah, they're going to need some. And of course, with Cooper getting traded, they're going to need some production out of someone other than CeeDee Lamb at the wide receiver position. So maybe Washington could come in and help fill that spot a bit until Gallup's healthy, and see what else they do in the draft, and maybe some of the more not like the lower price free agents, maybe they plug a hole with that. New York Giants, they signed backup quarterback Tyrod Taylor. Good guy if something happens to Daniel Jones, who has been hurt a couple times the last couple of years. They got a good guy who I think can just plug in and play. They got Washington tight end Ricky Seals-Jones. Looks like a pretty good move there. Ingram, of course, goes to Jacksonville. I didn't mention him, but he was the pass-catching tight end for them. They get Indy offensive lineman Mark Glowinski and Buffalo offensive lineman John Feliciano. So that's the Giants thing. They had the Andrew Thomas drafting last year, so maybe they're trying to do the right thing there and build a solid lineup front there for Jones and Barkley. So we'll see how that turns out. Philly re-signs Fletcher Cox, Greg Ward, and Boston Scott. So Fletcher Cox getting up there a little bit, but looks like good to see him come back to Philly and continue, maybe play out his career there. I'm not sure how many more years he's going to keep going, but good to see that they didn't just cast him aside. They gave him a pretty decent deal for him to stay put there in Philly. Great guy in their locker room, team leader, all-time legend there with that team. They also signed Carolina linebacker Hassan Reddick, so that gives them some pop off the edge there and some pass rushers. So we'll see, though. They also made a trade there where they swapped out one of their first rounders to New Orleans for a first rounder next year, plus extra picks. So I don't know. Philly did have 3 number 1 picks this year, so for them to trade one to move back into the draft next year, and who knows what New Orleans does this year, man. If they aren't a playoff type team, then maybe Philly's going to get a good, say, top 15 type pick if New Orleans takes a step down from what they have been the past couple of years, which is kind of looking like might be the case with Peyton leaving, Winston being kind of maybe going to be a while before he rounds into form with the injury he had. So there's a little more question marks with the Saints than there were, for the last 5-10 years, where that franchise is one of the best in the NFC. So Washington acquires Carson Wentz. So a little bit of a surprise there that they pulled the trigger on that move. They were kind of mentioned to be trying to acquire Russell Wilson. Didn't work. I heard them tied to a couple other quarterbacks in the league, but they ultimately went with Carson Wentz, who you kind of look at him, you still say, all right, he's got the size, he's got the arm, he's got skill set. Maybe Ron Rivera can coax more production out of him than he was able to get, or what's his name, Frank Wright was able to get out of him. They re-signed running back J.D. McKissick, safety Bobby McCain. They got Jacksonville offensive lineman Andrew Norvell. So Washington, we'll see where that takes them. Atlanta, AFC South. Atlanta trades Matt Ryan. So long-time franchise cornerstone quarterback there is now on his way to Indy. They signed Marcus Mariota to be the quarterback. So I guess that could be seen as, maybe a step down from going from Ryan to Mariota. If Mariota stays healthy, though, and with Arthur Smith, the guy that he's familiar with from his Tennessee days, maybe they can get something good out of that. They re-signed Cordero Patterson, who was very productive for him. They utilized him, it seemed like the best to his abilities. They add cornerback Casey Hayward, so it's a solid pick there. Solid pick up there. Carolina signs Cleveland wide receiver Rashard Higgins. They got Deontay Foreman, who was with Tennessee Titans and had some great moments there, filling in for Derrick Henry. O-lineman Austin Corbett from the Rams, who's obviously on the Super Bowl team, but solid pickup there, solid offensive lineman. So Carolina, Nothing really fancy, nothing splashy, but solid moves, I guess. New Orleans, not much to report. They did sign safety Marcus May, and they re-signed Jameis Winston. So once Winston comes back from his knee injury, he looks like maybe he can, step back in as the expected starter there. Tampa Bay re-signed Leonard Fournette and Chris Godwin. It's like I heard all off this whole once the season and they don't have any cap room. How are they going to keep all these guys are going to leave? It's like they kept everybody. It seems like Fournette's back, Godwin's back, Tom Brady comes back, Carlton Davis is back, Ryan Jensen comes back, and then they add Russell Gage. So the only one I see out of that list that left was what's his name going to. I'm drawing a blank over this. Oh my god. I said his name earlier. Anyway, whatever. We'll move on from that. OJ Howard. And he wasn't even the starting tight end. Chicago, going to the NFC North. Chicago signs Mike Pringle. That list on Chicago Bears I was like, there's really nothing too noteworthy here. I think they're just kind of maybe going to build to the draft. I don't know. Bears didn't have much to report there. Detroit signed DJ Shark and Josh Reynolds. I don't know. That's a couple of decent moves. Shark could be, if he's healthy, combined with some of the up-and-comers they have there in Detroit. Anyway, those were the two moves they made. Josh Reynolds looked like he did pretty good for them once they picked him up. Green Bay got defensive lineman Jaron Reed, so and cornerback Rasul Douglas. So good additions there on the defensive side of the ball, along with Devondre Campbell. So Packers, going defense there on their some of their offseason moves. Minnesota gets Zadarius Smith, who left Green Bay, went to Baltimore, and then backed out of that deal, and now goes back to Minnesota. Okay, so he ends up with the Vikings. They get Jordan Hicks, linebacker there, and D lineman Harrison Phelps. So kind of quiet there in the NFC North. Of course, Green Bay also traded Devontae Adams, so that's another subtraction from their team. We'll see who they plug in there and replace or add to that receiver. I think Valdez Scantling, I think, also took off on them, so it'll be interesting to see. Arizona, moving to NFC West now. Arizona re-signs Zach Ertz, James Conner, and Colt McCoy. So keeping some of the solid pieces that they had last year. The Rams, of course, they traded Robert Woods, but signed Allen Robinson. They got linebacker Bobby Wagner. That was kind of a surprise move there. Potentially a big one there. He's getting a few years under his belt there, but linebacker was a position that I didn't think was a super strength of theirs last year, but getting a guy of Wagner's caliber on that defense, pretty impressive. They re-signed Joe Notaboom and center Brandon Allen. So Brandon Allen. But anyway, they got the re-signed their center there, so they keep some of the O-linemen intact there, or O-line intact, with the exception of Corbett, who went to Carolina. And then we'll see about OBJ. That's still kind of up in the air there. What do they do with OBJ? If they can bring him back on a reasonable, team-friendly deal. He did hurt his knee there in the Super Bowl, but man, he was looking good with the Rams. It seemed like he finally found a home. Got Stafford, a quarterback that you would love, I'm sure, running routes and catching passes from, because he'll get it to you. So we'll see what OBJ does. He has a number of options. I'm sure teams are going to be interested in his services. San Fran, they get a Kansas City cornerback, Travarius Ward, Indy safety George Odom, and then wide receiver specialist Ray McLeod. So Niners, they lost Mostert, they lost DJ Jones to KC, to Denver, but they did get a few other pieces there to help things out with. And they, the Niners are a pretty savvy franchise. They're going to, I'm sure, find other capable replacements for some of the guys that they've lost. Mostert takes off, but they have, last year Elijah Mitchell steps in and does a good job and maybe cemented his spot as the team's running back. So we'll see. Niners. It's still interesting. They didn't trade Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think they're going to be handing the keys off to Lance. So Is Garoppolo, he had a shoulder surgery, I believe, too. Does that impact his trade value? We shall see what the Niners will do with that. And then finally, Seattle, they made the trade, of course, moving on from Russell Wilson, getting back Noah Fant and Drew Lock. Probably, as you see, it's probably time to hit that reset button and start building it up. But they did re-sign Rashard Penny, added some defensive players. Woods, Jefferson, re-signed Diggs. They had Nwosu for a linebacker. So Seattle's going to be interesting to see. They did get some draft capital back from Denver in the Wilson trade. So it's going to be interesting to see Wilson in a Bronco uniform. So really, though, of all the big name free agent quarterbacks, he's really the only one I think that well, Matt Ryan. But it's like I thought maybe Rodgers would be on the move, maybe Brady would retire. Wilson, does he stay? Does he go? So now we kind of see where these dominoes fall, and we'll keep an eye out. The NFL draft is coming up here at the end of the month, so I'll try to come back with a little content on that. Not like a Mel Kiper or a McShay type of guy, but I like to follow once these guys kind of land in certain spots and see where teams improved and who they added to their rosters. Because that's, to me, always kind of fun to see who had the best draft and got the most bang for their buck and stuff. So it's coming. It's right around the corner. It's going to be fun. So these were all kind of the free agent and trades that went down here this offseason in the NFL. So I appreciate you guys tuning in to join me. We'll be back again soon with some more content. So we'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.